Greetings, Region 3 Flamingos. My name is Tanya Blackwell, and I am so excited to be here with you. Welcome to the 2022 Spring Meeting Book Club. For those of you who are new to NCURA, I want to give you a brief background. In August of 2019, Dr. Freeman Hrabowski III left an indelible impression on the NCURA community with his delivery of a moving keynote address at the annual meeting in Washington, D.C. The following November, he released this book, The Empowered University, which provides a provocative guide for higher education leaders, such as yourselves, who want to promote healthy and productive campus communities. It was only appropriate that we would choose this book for our joint regional meeting with Region 4 in 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we were not able to have that meeting. So I'm beyond thrilled that we have this opportunity 2 years later, just short of Dr. Hrabowski's retirement, to have this talk with him. Dr. Hrabowski understands the vital role that research plays in higher education, and we can glean some valuable insights from him and this book, The Empowered University, on how to navigate cultural change and lead towards greater success. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Hrabowski, and welcome again to your NCURA family.
Thank you, Tanya.
How have things been for you?
Things are going well, and I'm delighted to be with you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, as you know, our membership read your book, and we have some questions for you about how to apply the concepts and the ideas to our jobs. So yes. I'll start out with one of the questions that was submitted. What advice do you have for young research administrators who feel powerless?
Sure. So it's a great question, and I get it from people at all levels, believe me. I start by saying that anyone in life needs to think about one's sense of self. Who am I? Who am I? Okay? Because it's important that each of us believes in him or herself, that we think about, this is who I am, this is my mission in life. Before you get to your job or your employer or university, just about you. It's really important. And then what's important to you. Now, if you're working at a university, it means you care about education. You care about the mission of a university. So I first want you to think of yourself, Tanya, and all of your colleagues as educators. As educators. Are you about the business of education and research? Right? Number two, I want you to look in the mirror and remember, you don't want anybody else to define who you are. People can assume they know you by how you look, your race, your gender, whatever, or they can assume they know you because of what position you have, but they don't know you. You know you. And then when we talk about being empowered, the Empowered University, it is the notion of each of us, first of all, being empowered to look in the mirror at self and to say, here are my strengths. These are the things I really like about myself. And here are the challenges I face or areas where I can improve. So the Empowered University is saying that to the whole university, it needs to do that, but it's also saying it to each of us as a person. And sometimes I tell people, write it down. This is what I really like. Here are my strong points. This is my brand that I'm working on. And then secondly, here are the areas where I need to improve, whether it's about having more opportunities to speak, or it's about how I act in a meeting and whether or not I'm feeling confident, or it's about getting to know the technical parts of the job better, all those kinds of things. Now, with that said, once you have that sense of self, then you want to come up with a plan for how you have some impact on the environment where you are. And I can go into that, but let me stop there, okay?
Okay. I like what you said about that, because a lot of times it's hard to see on a personal and a micro level how we can apply these concepts, but definitely it starts with self.
Yes.
So you wrote about risk, embracing risk.
But you know what? I'm sorry, Tanya, for interrupting.
No.
But I'm still thinking about your question, because it's similar to a question that I had to ask myself as a child growing up in Birmingham, Black child in Birmingham, always being told by the larger society that I was second class. So we got the hand-me-down books. We couldn't go to the better schools, just all of that. Couldn't go in the front door. And I'll never forget my community saying to me, you must not allow yourself to think that you are second class. All right. Now, I tell you that not to depress anybody, but to say this. You must not see yourself as powerless. Okay. You may not be having the impact you want to have, but you must see yourself as having the power to have an impact. Now, it may not be on your boss. It may not be in the immediate situation, but here's what I think. Each of us has the power to help change the world. And you can do that by having some impact on somebody. You start there. It might be a student. It might be a young staff member. It might be a young faculty member, but just being able to give encouragement to and support somebody else says you are having agency, the ability to have an impact on somebody. It may not be helping with the larger scheme issues. It may not be helping you with a boss who may or not be as supportive as you want, but start somewhere using your agency to have an impact on somebody, because you do not want to view yourself as the powerless one. Right. It can be very true. Yep. People aren't listening to me in my position. I get that. And there are two things I'm going to say. One, help anybody you can, number one. Number two, analyze. You have the power to analyze the situation, to understand who might have a willingness to listen to what you say, and to understand more about the administrative structure and who has the power. Make yourself a student of that experience, all right? And then start looking at best practices in your profession, in your grants administration work, and other universities. Because the other thing you have the power to leave also.
Yes.
If it's not really what you want, after a while, get the experience, know your truth, decide how much of your truth you can tell. Emily Dickinson said, tell the truth, but tell it slant. Sometimes you can't tell people, you can't just say you suck, but you can say, are there better ways we can do this? Find the questioning approach you can take to see if you can influence, and then give yourself time. Don't leave any place out of anger. Keep breathing deeply. There's a saying I use that says, those the gods wish to destroy, they first make angry. Don't let people make you angry. And if you get angry, just breathe deeply and give yourself time. And when people want you to respond fast and you're feeling that emotion, just say, I need time to think.
You write sweet Jesus in your notebook, right?
you don't know that, but that's what they found. That's exactly what they found.
I do know that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that.
You done your homework. You really done your homework, right?
I'm telling you, I got so much out of this book, and I've been in that situation where you're in a meeting and you can't say what you want to say.
Yeah.
And so you just, okay, so I have been using that.
It's so funny because the book, it's so amazing. But I did tell that story, and it's such a true story that this was in the research park. We were trying to get it started, and people didn't want it because of traffic. And they were saying, I wanted it because I wanted to make money for myself. And I was so angry and I couldn't show it. And I needed to let the release come in some form. And I wrote that because that's what I remember my mother always saying. Don't use profanity, just say sweet Jesus. And when they came into my office and stole my notes, they just knew they were going to say all kinds of profanity. And they put it in this little paper that he said, sweet Jesus. Okay, I'm of faith. Yeah.
Worse than you can find on me? Okay.
I love it. Tanya, you did your homework on the book. I love it. I love
it. It's wonderful and powerful. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It gives you something tangible that you can use in your real life.
But so feel empowered, even in a situation where people aren't giving you the respect you deserve, because you can have the power to analyze that situation. And you can carry yourself in a way that says, wow, look at this person. This person has a can-do attitude about it. Ask good questions. Always ask good questions, given the circumstances, use the right tone, because you don't want to intimidate people, right? But drop a seed, plant a seed that gets them maybe thinking about another approach to doing it. And keep studying best practices in your profession at other places. to see what they
And that's
do.
what's really powerful about NCURA, because we do have all of these conferences and meetings. And so it helps you to learn from what other people are
Yes,
doing at other
yes,
institutions.
yes,
So you don't have to be stuck in what's happening at your current institution,
that's
and you
right.
can bring that information back and say, this is what they're doing at all these
Yep,
institutions. Maybe we
yep,
can apply that.
yep. And I would also suggest that all of you think about writing an article. Look at articles that are written in your profession, all right? Writing an article about what you're learning, about challenges that grants administrators face, about looking at the best practices of other places and commenting on what you like about a review of a book, all those things, because it does two things. It gives you a chance to put in writing some of your thoughts, number one. Number two, it gives you a chance to analyze what you consider is important. And number three, it lets other people see how you think, and it will open doors to other opportunities. Keep that thought. And that's not trying to pull you from any university, but as I say to my colleagues here, there are so many positions at certain levels and certain paths. And we've got to be willing to be supportive of people as they look at professional development, you see. So, but writing articles, getting a chance to present, interviewing with NCURA, all these are great things to do because people get to see literally how you think, how you interact with other people. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm glad you circled back to that.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
we'll take a little, make a little switch to talk about risk. So
Yes.
I do like the section where you talk about embracing risk, but in research administration, because of all the compliance issues and things of that nature, audits, and we're in a very extremely risk adverse profession.
Yeah.
So how can we be more open-minded, or
Yes.
even help our leadership to be open-minded to embracing risk in a positive way?
So you said it well. You start with a guiding principle. There are certain compliance guidelines that you must adhere to be able to continue to get the funding and the support from agencies and other places. But so
Right.
given that foundation, it seems to me the area of risk has to do with an area of opening one's mind to how things are done in other places. Some would call it risk when you change anything, but this is why what we talked about earlier, your organization, NCURA, and getting a chance to look at best practices in other places. As we work for years on shared services, service centers, and ways of doing things differently, when some departments wanted to do it on their way only, when we saw the benefit of making things more consistent using technology, it really did take bringing up the best practices from other institutions and comparing how we do compared to them and the benefits of changing and getting people. Risk is about opening one's mind to other possibilities. And the possibilities involve how else we might do things. What else might be our goals? I'll give you just one example. We have been a solid research campus, but are two, because we had the research in science and engineering and revenues. We are number 15 in funding from NASA, for example. We're one of the leading producers of talent for NSA. So in this corridor, we do quite well with federal agencies, but we had not taken the risk of investing much more in the humanities and social sciences, and needed to open our minds that we're not just a science and tech place, but we have the ability to produce more PhDs in the social sciences, humanities, but we're going to have to invest in those things. Now, there were people who wanted us just to double down on the one area, the STEM area. There were others who from STEM who understood, no, we want to be broader, right? And so we started this more than a decade ago, and I was shocked in the last few months. I thought we'd finally get to research one, because we're a mid-sized campus. We have 14,000 students, 3,000 grad, 11,000 undergrad, kids from 100 countries. But the fact is, I was fine without being great with undergrads and research two. And I said, one day we'll get to be research one. All right. But in the last few months, I got this letter. We became research one. We were so pleased. And for a young university, it's a big deal. Now, some of your people know this. There are 146 now out of the thousands of universities. Some have been there for years because they're 100+ years old.
Right.
We are a great experiment because we are young. We were just founded in the 60s. And And yet we've got first-rate faculty, pound for pound. The amount of money per faculty member is very impressive, okay? But the larger you are, the easier it is to have a lot of money anyway, because you got a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's just real. But for us, it was taking the chance to not put all the funding or support into one area, STEM, but to say, no, we want to be broader than that. In the production of PhDs, in the grants, in the humanities, in the creative arts, and it paid off. It paid off because all of a sudden then we become eligible for all kinds of other opportunities as this. The same thing is true without being selected to be, excuse me, a part of the University Innovation Alliance. That's out of Arizona State, but the fact is that it's about innovation. And we've worked very hard in the teaching and learning and redesigning courses, but all the way over to the work that connects disciplines and national agencies to work on projects that will allow us to have a niche area. It was taking a risk to have a niche area because then you become more attractive to funding agencies, and it's worked well. Now, for you and for grants administrators, I think the risk comes in, first of all, being broader about what everybody else does in the business. And number two, finding the right approach to working with the people at a higher level so that you don't intimidate them on the one hand, but on the other hand, so they see you as value added.
Yes.
And as a thought partner. This is what I tell my colleagues who are at different levels. See yourselves as educators and thought partners. And you have some expertise that others at higher levels don't necessarily have. And when you can say, this is how we're doing it right now, but this is how I've seen it done in these other institutions where we know their peers or institutional peers, aspirational peers. Could we look at how we might adapt that here? Can we try something on a small scale and see how it works?
A pilot, perhaps.
That's it. Now there's
one
where the
department
risk,
or one area or one PI even.
Yep. That's where the risk comes in that you don't know if it'll work, but you really think it will, and you want to get people to buy into it in that piloting situation to see. The risk is maybe it won't work, but at least you know then whether it would work or not.
And you do talk a lot about the data analytics, which I think is important for us as well to understand that you try the thing, you gather the data, and then that allows you to make more informed decisions going forward.
That's it. You've done your homework. I am so impressed.
Thank you.
I guess it would be unethical if I asked you if you were looking for a job, wouldn't it? I shouldn't ask you that. I don't think my friend at Georgia Tech would like that. But let me say this. I used the TED Talk that I did on 4 pillars of college success, and it upset some people because it's about the weed out culture in STEM. But I bring it up, and you are an engineer, so you'll appreciate this, because what I've come to know is those basic principles, those 4 pillars of success, are applicable not just for undergraduates in STEM, but what we've done in recruiting women faculty and faculty of color, but also what we've done at the university. High expectations, not just of students, but of each of us. What are we expecting of ourselves? And then the next question is, what should people at one level expect of people at the next level? That's a sensitive conversation. But the expectation of saying, this is how you as a vice president can help me as a grant specialist. All right, just having those conversations. Number 2, it takes people in a profession to pull others into it, whether it's a scientist into science or the humanities, or grant specialists and people at the next level of the things done in research administration. Because one of the parts when thinking about cross-fertilization is, what are the other areas in research administration that you might be interested in learning about and seeing how they connect? And it takes people in those areas to be willing to give you the chance to understand more about what it would do to transition to another area or to have more areas under you, okay? And then third, we talk about the value of community, that if it's a cutthroat environment, nobody's learning from anybody. How do you get to the point of getting beyond one person thinking, if you go up, I go down? How we create a culture that we let us lift each other up. You see, and human beings are very, very unpredictable. That's in your family, that's in your own relationships, it's at your job. We know that.
Absolutely.
And it takes leaders to try to bring out the best in each of us so that we can work. And the best has to do with what can I do to help you? Okay, so that's great. And then finally, rigorous evaluation. Is this really
Yes.
working? Is this working? What, I mean, not just in terms of the technical situation. Yeah, we are compliant, but how are people feeling about the process?
Yes.
Do people like to be here? Do they like coming to work? Or do they like, if we're using technology, are we using it effectively? Are we getting to know each other? Are we building the trust? What are the concerns people have? Do people feel listened to? Those are the kinds of evaluation questions that every environment should be involved with.
Absolutely. And with things changing, the pandemic, remote work, and all that people have gone through in the last years, I think that's why we're seeing the great resignation. Because people are realizing, they're evaluating themselves and saying, I'm not happy at work. And I could be. There are people that have found that joy and that passion with what they do. Work is going to be challenging. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you should feel demoralized or undervalued just because of the challenges.
You're so right. We have put a lot of emphasis on supporting the mental health, not just of our students, though, of our staff and faculty, and our shared governance units have planned special days where we give people strategies to use. And we have leaders talking about it. I talked in my interview about the fact that Jackie, my wife, and I, we do Tai Chi. We go to acupuncture, or we get in so many steps. She does Pilates. We use the Calm app. We do meditation. We talk about on our phones, taking a mindful minute just to breathe deeply, and it's important for faculty and staff and students to know that the leaders are human too, and that we feel for people who have families and children or parents they're taking care of. It's a time when we got to be more compassionate. Absolutely. And more flexible in the hybrid approach or the remote learning, those kinds of things, depending on circumstances, And when people can see that the university cares about them as people, not just as a worker, those workers, those employees, those colleagues feel better about working at that place. So we just had yesterday, it was a great day for achievements of faculty and staff with students involved. And it was like a big basketball celebration with tables with exhibits. This is where we are, and this is what we've done. And we want to celebrate these people. And our new president, who's coming from Duke, who is the Dean of Arts and Sciences of the Trinity College of Arts and Sciences at Duke, a polymer chemist, who comes out of our first Black woman president, second Black president, but first Black woman president, who's brilliant and so caring. She and I went around, and when you get a chance, you can look at the dance with the spontaneous dancing she and I did. And I bring it up because I've gotten so many comments from my staff and faculty just saying, wow, it was so much fun, right? And it's so good to see you guys can be human. And
yes.
Doc, wait a minute, as old as you are, you can still dance, right?
But so you look so great and so young.
You're very kind. I say at UMBC, we work to stay young.
I love it. Rub some of that off onto me.
I love it. So, and again, I'm loving the way you're interviewing, because a part of the message for professionals is we must bring humor into the work. If it's all serious all the time, we'll go crazy. If you notice, we talk about the metaphor of the emergency room. If you ever see the doctors and the nurses over in a corner in a room where the public can't see them, you'll see them laughing. And somebody can say, well, they seem so insensitive. No, they need the laughter to deal with all of the trauma that they in the emergency room. They got to balance it sometimes. And our jobs are hard at every level. There are deadlines, there are difficult people, there are circumstances you don't understand, the mystery of COVID and all that. We have to have ways of balancing that. And a part of your power is in helping your colleagues know, folks, we can get through this. I mean, the one line I used in the darkest of days with my student groups doing this kind of talk with my faculty and staff was at the end, they knew what I was going to say. They said, wait for it, wait for it. And then comes my line, keep hope alive, keep hope alive. And at first, some people said, why do you keep saying that? And later on, they said, we're so glad you say that. Just, it sounds so simple, but we have to keep the hope. It's very important.
And to keep it alive, we have to feed it. And knowing those things
very nice.
That will feed your own hope.
Very nice. Well, you know what you just did? It shows why collaboration is important. I use the Criminal Minds TV show. You know how?
Oh, I love that show.
One person feeds on another, and that's how they come to. Well, as I said, to keep hope alive, and then you immediately fed on that by saying, "But what does it mean to keep hope alive?" And you gave me an answer. You got to feed it, and it's that kind of collaborative spirit, and that's what grant specialists they can do. They can help feeding on and asking questions and adding value and seeing if people have the sense and the wisdom to hear them. You know what I mean? That's what everybody has to do. You observe and you evaluate the situation. Are they appreciating me? Right? And you work on ways of getting that appreciation and keeping calm, even if you don't get it. And if you're not, then you find ways of enhancing your career nationally or in groups like this. And at the right time, you decide, am I in the right place or not? It's only a fair question. It really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we'll take another little pivot.
Okay.
I really like what you have done and what your campus has done with regards to minorities. But what is considered a minority today is very different than what it was before. And also with what we're seeing with DEI groups and all of these inclusive efforts.
Yes.
So how can leaders get ahead of this curve? Because that's going to continue to change as we change as a country.
Yep. And we say that in this book, and we're writing another one that's a sequel to that book on this post-COVID period. That'll be out next year. I'm really pleased. And I've talked with people around the country. There are 2 or 3 things I would say. You'll notice campuses focus a lot on DEI when there is a tragedy in the larger community. And then the media, George Floyd, beyond all these, and you have the riots, and then students are reflecting that frustration on the campus, and the university knows it must do more. So what we're saying is there's no such thing as a time when we should not be doing more. We should be doing more all the time and thinking about these issues. So I applaud your organization and you for asking the question. And the first thing I would say is that, no, we do have to have this broad meaning of minority. We're talking about race, gender, LGBTQ, physical challenges, religion, people from other countries, immigration, right? And those are the ones that come to mind. And I'm probably forgetting one, but I'm saying race and ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ, the religion, how people are treated, people coming in, first generation college students, another one, right? All of these are very appropriate groups to focus on. They are groups that have been in one way or the other disenfranchised, and they are not well represented in the mainstream, okay? Now, with that said, here's the sensitive conversation. How do you acknowledge every group and not dilute the strength of what you do for each group? Wow. It is true. Black lives do matter. And there is a challenge that Blacks and Latinos are at the bottom academically, in income, in education level, in all those ways. It is true that women are certainly underrepresented broadly at the higher university level, and especially in the technical areas, whether it's aerospace engineering or computer science. There were not a lot of women in general in your area, and certainly not looking like you. I know that already. So kudos to you on having a background in aerospace engineering from Georgia Tech. But I would say this, in our Inclusion Council, Equity and Inclusion Council, we've worked to have representation from all those groups, students, faculty, staff. It's been headed by a person over our equity office with a legal background, and co-chaired by our Dean of Engineering, who is very proud and gay, an out gay man who speaks eloquently about diversity in different ways. We have women faculty there. We have African Americans and Latinos and Asian. We have one person expert in Native Americans. We have the physical challenges that we're talking about. And we have people representing different religions. And finally, people from other countries and first generation college. So it's a big group, yes. Now they can divide up into subgroups, right? But we want every group to know about the other group's issues also. It's really important, right? When you talk about the faculty, for example, here, we know that our #1 challenge is getting more Black faculty, especially in STEM. We've gotten up to maybe 10% in the arts and humanities. We have our first Black head of a college with faculty. Very proud.
Okay.
And she's a Black woman. Dr. Kimberly Moffat, who's an expert on Michelle Obama. Very proud of her, very proud of her. We had our first woman dean before her of engineering, who went on to become, she went through assistant to full professor here, went on to become the dean of engineering at Virginia Tech. So they stole my dean. We love her and she's still UMBC, but we got her daughters. Her daughters are in student here, in school here.
Oh, okay, generational.
Yeah, but the other thing I would say is this. It's important to do more than check the boxes.
Yes.
It's important to do more than say we have a diversity officer. Because when I speak to the chief diversity officers, the first question they always ask you is, how do we get some power? Because it's one thing for people to have an office. Question is, do they have any power? And that's about who's willing to listen, how much advice of what people take, how involved are they included in critical decisions. And for us, we've had several points of view. One is, I really want my chief officers, from research to the provost, to administration and finance, to student affairs, to advancement, to believe they also are diversity officers. These are people who are not minorities, a couple of women, but I want them to be involved in this work. I think for campus to be effective, there must be a multi-layered approach. What role should the president and the provost and the VP for research, all these people play in this space in looking at who is involved in the work? Are we bringing in more people of color into grants administration? Are we doing that for women in certain areas, and people from different backgrounds? And then the two things. One would be representation. Do we have some representation reflecting the American public, reflecting the students on campus, those kinds of things? But the other big issue is, what's the climate? How are people feeling about the environment? And are they comfortable telling you what they really think? There's where the issue comes.
Yes.
How do you know when you say, oh, there are no problems? We know we have the advanced grant. We had it for years. And I was the PI on the advanced grant with several department chairs, women. But the advanced grant is to produce more women in the STEM areas, in the faculty and administration. And people said, well, you're a guy though. I said, yeah, but men should be as concerned about the paucity of women in STEM as white should be about the paucity of minorities in areas. And the #1 guideline I had was, let me keep humility. Let me be vulnerable enough to say there's a lot I don't know about what women are experiencing on this campus. And the question is, are your leaders taking that attitude about people of color also, or about the LGBTQ community, to say, tell me what it's like. How can we make it better? What else needs to happen here in a way that doesn't cause backlash, but in a way that helps you to have a better experience here? And what is the process we use for finding out what people really think? For finding out, sometimes people don't tell you what they really think because they worry they may not have a job, or they may not get a good evaluation. So these are the authentic conversations, tough conversations every campus must have. Yes.
So that's a perfect segue, actually. One of the quotes that you have in the book says, a healthy campus is one in which its members can have difficult conversations, ask probing questions, consider the evidence, and work collaboratively toward a solution. So we talked a lot about that already.
Yes.
But what recommendations do you have for those of us who are working on unhealthy campuses that almost intentionally shy away from those difficult conversations?
#1 advice, find allies. Find people in powerful positions who want to know more about what people at different levels are experiencing. Build a healthy relationship with one or two people who, whether it's a woman or a person of color or a wonderful white guy, who will listen to you and give you advice. What should I do? And
How do I navigate the situation?
find them. For each individual, you must have somebody who's a professional mentor there on that campus. It may not be somebody in your area, but somebody who can give you support when you're frustrated and whom you can trust. Okay, that's number one. Number two, identify a group of allies who want to understand what people from diverse groups are experiencing. All right. So that, and it's going back to the piloting idea. We started with small groups of people who just wanted to know more about what are you going through? Is it a good environment? Have we used analytics to see who stays and who leaves? Are there more people from diverse groups leaving, and why are they leaving? Have we talked with them before they left or even after they've gone to say, what was the environment like for you? Is it just because you got a great experience or a great opportunity, or were you not feeling heard or appreciated? What is the situation? And I would say enlightened institutions will have a structure in place so that people from different groups can have conversations. And what the institution has to know is when some Blacks get together, or some Latinos are together, or some women are together, or LGBT group, they're not there to talk about a group. They're there to support each other. Yes. And to say, how can I be more effective in this environment? Now, part of being effective may be looking at the structure and what needs to change, but the goal is to help each person to be as productive and as pleased with how things are going as possible. So it's determining a structure that allows for the trust, so people will tell you what they think. But for individuals, find somebody who knows the environment well and have a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know we're getting close to our time. So I just want to ask you if you have any last words of wisdom for your NCURA family.
I appreciate that, and appreciate your considering me a part of the family. Tanya, first of all, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. You
handle yourself well. You do what any leader does. You did your homework. You know that book. You know the questions. You knew how to respond to me. And this is something I think all of us should do. It's the preparation that makes the difference. It really is. And then it's building authentic connections. And we can do this remotely. We've never met before. And yet here we are. I will never forget Tanya Blackwell as a dynamic leader at Georgia Tech, right? With that great smile and keen intellect. And I say, be the change. That's what I'm going to tell you to do for all of you. Be the change. Some people said it was Gandhi. Some people don't know who said it, but I love that. Be the change. Meaning what? You can't change the whole environment, but you can use what you have on the inside to help somebody else say it will be okay. It sounds like something simple, but just helping one person amazingly can change an environment. Be the change. That's my advice.
I want to show you something. I have this hanging right here.
I love it.
Become the change. So if you aren't already the change.
That's exactly right. See, and I feel it from you. I mean, each of us will impact, even in a meeting on Zoom. You can either elevate people or depress people. Keep hope alive. Keep feeding the hope.